Welcome to everyone joining us today. This is our Ask the Expert open Q&A session. So a bit of a different webinar for us today. So we invited you along to ask any question you'd like to about using the Good Exchange platform, fundraising, attracting donations, grants, match funding, generally navigating around your dashboard, adding projects. So anything you'd like to ask, you'll be able to do that in the session today. And we've got a team here to help you. Marina, can you switch slides? So today our agenda for the webinar, we're going to start off just with some instructions on how to ask your question on the webinar today. So there's a couple of ways that you can pose a question to us during the webinar so that we can answer for you live. We're going to go through 3 top questions and answers. So there's 3 very common questions that we get through to support on the Good Exchange and generally, and we'll cover the answers for those. And then we're going to open up for a Q&A session for everyone. And at that point, you'll be able to pose your questions and get an answer from one of our team members. So moving on to our top 3 questions and answers on the Good Exchange, we're just going to work through these 3 for you now. And Marina's going to head up the first one for you.
So the first question that we get at the Good Exchange that a lot of people who are new to the platform ask us, or how can they use the Good Exchange? How do they set it up? And how do they reach specific funders and also crowdfund? Because there is a bit of confusion between making an application to a funder and using the Good Exchange. So the main difference between the Good Exchange as a platform and an application to a funder, well, there's several differences. One is the Good Exchange is 100% owned by a charity, Greenham Trust. So Greenham Trust is one of the funders that provides funds to local charitable organisations and community groups through the platform. But there are also a number of other funders that use the Good Exchange to give out their grants. And once a charitable project has been made live on the platform, it is visible to all the funders that use it. So when you're making an application, bear in mind that it's not just for one funder, but it could be seen by several funding organisations. So the other thing that people get confused about is how do I set up my project and my organisation? So there's 3 steps here, which we've separated into 3 boxes. The first one, you have to create an account for yourself as a person. So like anything else, like Facebook or any social media or email, you create your own personal account, and that's the one you use to log into the Good Exchange. And we've put the link there for you, which takes you to the login page. The second thing you have to do is to register your charitable organisation, community group, sports club. And this is where you put the information in about what your organisation generally does for the beneficiaries that you support. And also it's very important to be clearly to state where those beneficiaries are based, because most of the funders that use the platform give out their funds in an area, usually a local area, and they're usually quite specific about where those funds are given. So you set up your own account, you register your organisation, then once that's done, then you can start to set up your fundraising projects. Now you can have more than one fundraising project on the Good Exchange at a time, and then those different projects could be matched to different funders, for example, if those funders have different criteria they're giving grants for. So this is your grant application, and it's also the page that your fundraisers and donors can see on the Good Exchange platform. So while you're having your project live on the Good Exchange, you could also be driving donors to give donations to it, and you could be doing fundraising activities and getting those funds paid in. And if you have match funding, that money that's raised could be matched £1 for £1 by another grant funder. And fundraising projects on the Good Exchange are usually kept live for a year, but there are plenty of options to change the dates and extend projects, for example, if you're still fundraising or if it's a multi-year project. And we've put on the slides here a couple of links. So this takes you to a resource that tells you how to register your organisation, and this is a resource about how to create a fundraising project. And we will make all these slides available to everyone after the session, so don't worry about writing everything down. So once you've created your project, the next thing to do is to get it reviewed and live. So that will be reviewed and live by Misha and our support team. So once the project is live, it acts like a single application on the Good Exchange. So it automatically is seen by all eligible funders who have live grants on the platform, and they will review and shortlist according to their funding timelines and criteria. So you don't need to do any chasing up of the funders or checking up or anything, because they will do that according to their criteria. If your project gets accepted by a funder for an offer, the offers are sent via the Good Exchange, but via email. So you'll receive an email from a funder via the Good Exchange making an offer, and then through the platform, you can review that offer, you can sign and make sure you accept and upload any terms and conditions via your applicant dashboard on the Good Exchange. And then, as I said earlier, at the same time, you can be fundraising for those projects that you've got on the platform. And one important thing, actually, we had a webinar yesterday with Sovereign Housing, and they said that their distribution committee looks favourably on applications through the Good Exchange, where they can see that the charitable organisations have done some fundraising or raised or got some projects or grants of their own, because they like to see that they're being independent and also driving funds towards it and not just waiting for grants to come in. So that's something to bear in mind when you're using the Good Exchange. So now I'm going to hand back to Misha, who's going to answer the second most commonly asked question that we get.
Okay, so this one is, how do I continue working on my draft project and then submit it for review? So sometimes you'll create your project and you'll see what you've done so far, and you have to go away and do something else and come back to find it again. And people will often say to me, I've come back in, I can't find my project, what I've completed so far. I cannot figure out how to get back into it. And I'm clicking on edit public page and it's not working. The reason it's not working is because when you need to work on anything fundamental in your project, any of the main details, always click on the project title. The Edit Public Page button is only for updating visual aspects of your public page. So adding videos, adding photos, changing the main image on your page, adding little updates for donors. That's really all that's for. So Edit Public Page is purely for that, but click on the title to do anything fundamental at all. Even when your project is live and it's moved to the Approved tab in your dashboard, and you want to do something, again, fundamental, like change the costs in the project, make an edit request, accept a funding offer, any of that stuff is always click on the title. If you want to come in and amend a photo, it's Edit Public Page. So do have a look at that when you're in your dashboard. Those are two separate pieces there, and that should help you find any of the details that you have added so far onto your project. Okay, next slide, please. Just going to hand over to Julian now. I think he's maybe dropped off. Had some issues with internet today, so I might quickly cover this for Julian whilst he's away. So our third question, very commonly asked, is how can I add funds raised outside of the Good Exchange to my live project? Now, there's a couple of ways that you can do this. Now, if you've got proceeds from an event that you've run and you want to add them on in some way, you can first of all donate them onto the project page. So to do that, you're doing exactly what donors do, and you're clicking on Donate Now on your page, and you can donate the funds through by credit or debit card or BACS. Now that's all online now. BACS used to be a manual form, but that's been discontinued. BACS is fully online via your project page now. Now, when you add your funds in this way, do be sure during the donations process to state how those funds were raised in the messages field. So you might want to say collection bucket at Summer Fete, for example, or raffle dinner, something like that. So do mention in there how you've raised those funds. And this option, adding donations, will take advantage of any match funding in place on the project, as long as that donation is eligible under the supporting funders terms. It will incur a platform fee, but donors and funders can donate to contribute to that fee. So you might find that that fee reduces over time, or sometimes becomes zero in some cases. But also adding your funds as donation, it provides visibility of support from external funders. So a funder might come in and say, look, they're doing all this fundraising, looking at their project page, I'd really like to support them as well. What we're really trying to do on the Good Exchange is have collaboration of donors, funders, lots of people supporting you to get your project completely funded as soon as possible. So adding those funds is a really great way to show funders and other donors that you're actively fundraising, and they can come in and help out as well and be part of that fundraising team to help you out. Now, the second way that you can add funds raised outside of the Good Exchange is to add them as externally raised. Now, this allows you to add kind of an info-only piece about this is how much I've raised outside of the platform, and that accounts for that amount in your fundraising target. Now, not all funders on the Good Exchange who provide you match funding will match externally raised funds. Some will and some won't. So do always refer to your funder terms and conditions of the offer for that to make sure that they would be matched first of all before you add them. And adding externally raised funds won't attract a fee. It's completely free. You're just adding it on as an information purpose. But again, adding these funds can be seen by funders. They can see that you've added these externally raised funds or you've added these donations, and that can encourage them to support you as well and collaborate together. Now, if you need to refer to the terms and conditions of your funding offer, your match funding offer, you want to know, okay, I want to add these funds, I'm not quite sure if the funder is going to match them, then you can just have a look at the terms and conditions of the funder on your dashboard, and that's under the approved projects section. Again, like we said before, clicking on the title, and under funding offers, you will find the terms that you've signed for the funder. Now, we've also added at the bottom here a donations guide. This can be useful for you when you're adding a donation, your fundraising proceeds, but it's also useful to send that out to your supporters, your donors, if they are wanting to know how to donate normally, credit or debit card, buy backs, how that works, how do I do it? It's got step-by-step instructions that they can follow there. And there's a little bit more information about how to add externally raised funds as well. And as Marina said, don't worry about scribbling these down or anything. We'll make sure that you get a copy of all of these slides at the end of the webinar today.
Thanks, okay. Misha, and sorry I couldn't do that bit, but having a few technical problems this morning. Can I just add that it's really important that you add the funder name when you're putting those externally raised funds on. Because it acts as an endorsement to other funders, and not just the fact that you raised £1,000 or £2,000. The funder name will really help to encourage other funders to fund alongside.
Yeah, thanks, Julian. Very true. It's all about the collaboration and getting your fundraising done as soon as possible, really. Okay, next slide. So we're now going to open up our Q&A. So we've got our team this morning, as you can see. We've got myself, as you know, quite often you'll be speaking to me via support@thegoodexchange.com. I'm the client support manager on the Good Exchange. And we've got Marina, who's our head of marketing. And we've got Julian as well, who's head of collaborative funding. He can answer lots of questions on funders on the Good Exchange. He works directly with them. And we've got Jill from Greenham Trust joining us today. If you would like to ask any questions about Greenham Trust funding and offers that you have. So thank you for everyone for joining us today to answer questions. And we're just going to open up now and start answering some of those.
So as I said earlier, you can type your question in to the Q&A box, or you can raise your hand and we can allow you to speak. Now, we've got a couple of questions. One is from Helen at Parity for Disability. She asks, what sort of causes or projects are most likely to secure multi-year funding? I think that might be one for maybe Jill and Julian.
Perhaps start with Jill. Poor right. Julian's dropped off again. He's not having a good time today.
So, right, from a Greenham Trust perspective, we have a number of funding schemes, the majority of which we refer on a case-by-case basis, on a biannual basis. So we have our community grants that we look at twice a year. We have Trust Top Up, which is match funding, which we offer usually when the project first goes live. If you're looking for multi-year funding, we do have a small fund available for what we call 3-year funding, and that's for core costs. And that would be for applicants where we've identified that they need the security of knowing that they're going to have some guaranteed funding for a 3-year period. As I say, in general, our preference would be to go down the annual route and encourage people to seek funding from other funders and other sources and not become 100% reliant on funding from Greenham Trust. But as I say, we do acknowledge that some organisations have an ongoing need and do struggle in that domain. And for those, we will look at the potential of a 3-year funding offer. I hope that answers that question.
Just on a general basis, Julian's back with us now. Generally, funders and offering multi-year funding, how do the other funders feel about that on the platform?
Yeah, I think so. Unfortunately, during the pandemic, 25% of charities had to dip into their reserves, according to the Charity Commission, and many have exhausted those. And that's the time to use your reserves, obviously. But now, those reserves are drying up. The time now is to support core funding, and the demand for core funding applications has risen dramatically. And I think funders are realising that more now, and generally speaking, are more amenable to supporting core funding applications as well as individual projects. So there is a want to support core funding applications from charities and community organisations.
Okay, well, thank you. So we have a question in from George at Greenham, and he says, our project and fundraising initiatives have been stalled by the COVID pandemic. What advice or recommendations do you have to relaunch the project to regain the attention of funders and donors? So I would say from a marketing point of view, George, we've seen some of the most successful projects to regain attention have been where the applicants have created some initiatives of their own as well to start to drive fundraising and activity. So I don't know if you have any followers or supporters and you can organise some sort of activity where you get them to drive donations, or if anyone's got a significant family event or something. So for example, I've got a significant birthday coming up, and instead of having presents, I've asked everybody to donate to a project on the Good Exchange, and that hopefully will start to drive donations and awareness. But from a marketing point of view, I would also recommend using social media. And if you're not a social media person, then find someone who supports your project who is, and use that to drive donations and activity, because a lot of it is about activity. But I'm only talking from a marketing point of view. I can hand over to Julian and Jill and Misha with ideas on how to do that through the Good Exchange platform. Maybe you then, Misha?
No, in terms of your Good Exchange project, the main thing on there is really give that some visual appeal. So we're talking about the edit public page button earlier on. Add some images related to your project, add videos if you can. And also, it's also about getting people involved and getting more visual stuff done. So let's say, for example, you were running a particular fundraising activity in support of your project. You can get out there and take videos on your phone. If you're using social media, you can take live videos via social media. And it's all about generating interest and generating engagement with people. Definitely would start with building up the project page and making that look good, and then really using social media as well to promote that. We'd certainly have a look at our resources page on the Good Exchange or our YouTube channel, because we've got lots and lots of help on using social media for fundraising on there, from absolute beginner all the way up. So do have a look at that if you can.
Jill, have you got anything to add from a funder perspective?
Well, George, I believe from memory, this is a project, you've got a project live that we've offered some major match funding towards. So I would suggest that come up with some, like for your relaunch, if you can come up with some sort of fundraising event, and then certainly let us have details of it. And we as Greenham Trust will be more than happy to support that and share that on social media to help encourage donations for you.
Thank you, Jill. Julian's back now. Julian, did you have anything to add to George's question?
Yeah, I think what we've all learned is how to work differently during the pandemic, and a lot of what we've experienced from fundraising organisations is the way to kind of innovate, particularly digitally. So providing a service in a different way, whether it's online, and changing the direction of your service to accommodate people differently who can't necessarily meet in person. So we've seen a lot of different ways of working, and I think that is important to consider when you're making an application.
Right, so let's move on to the next question. The next question is from Linda. She's asking, one for you, Misha, where can I find all of my invoices and platform charge offsets from donors?
Okay. What I might do is share my screen for this one and show you, Linda, where to find that on your dashboard. Okay, and you should hopefully see a dashboard here that we have. Okay, so Greenham Trust been very kind and let me use their applicant dashboard. They often run some big fundraising appeals as an applicant too. So we're going to have a quick look at how to find that information, Linda, here. So if you go to My Dashboard once you're logged in, and then click on Reports. Now, in this section, we used to provide you with invoices for your fee and statements on your funding pre-October 2019. We used to do these separately here. But what we've now done is we've replaced these with an activity report. And this report is a comprehensive report of all funding coming through your project, all of it, so all donations, all gift aid, all match funding, all grants, and it also will show you when and if these amounts have been paid out to you yet. So when you create this report, it will open an Excel file, and that Excel file will have 3 tabs on it. The first tab will be general overview of your funding and your payments. The second tab will be the comprehensive piece that you can filter down if you want to look at one payment you've had, or you want to look at donations from 1 month. You can filter all of that down and manipulate it how you want to. And the third tab is something a little bit different. It will show the contact details of any donors who've opted in to sharing their details with you if you'd like to thank them for their donation. So it's a bit of a comprehensive big report that you can visit here. So that's something definitely to use as much as you can. You might want to add a finance person from your organisation or a treasurer onto your account so that they can view and use this whenever they want to. Very, very useful report to have. It also does have some information on the fees, but our finance system, our finance team do email you invoices separately for your fee portion. So that will become much clearer for the fee, because what we do is in each month, we transfer all funding you've received on a project every single month. And that's standalone and that happens anyway. Your fee is taken separately, usually by direct debit. And that's why the invoices are slightly separate for that from everything else. So do have a look at the activity report. We do have an FAQ on our help and support page on the website that can tell you exactly how to use it. So do have a look at that. And you can always email me with any questions as well, Linda. Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Misha. So we've got a question in from Alex. If I raise cash at a coffee morning, for example, that cash would be paid into the organisation bank account. So any donation would appear to be from ourselves. Julian mentioned that we should say who is making the donation, but then this would appear that we're donating to ourselves. Is that okay?
That's fine, Alex. That's not a problem. So what you'd be looking to do is add the funds as a donation. And during the process in the messages field, tell us how you've raised that. So for you, you'd be looking at coffee morning funds or coffee morning collection, June 2021, whatever that is. That's okay that you're paying it in yourself. You're being very clear about where it's come from, and it may or may not be eligible for matching depending on the funder's terms and if you've got a match funding offer. So that's not a problem to do. Your other option is to add it as external funds, but again, whether that will be matched will depend on the funder. So I would have a look, if you've got a match funding offer, have a look at those terms of the funder in your dashboard and certainly add them on as a donation or externally raised funds. No problem at all.
It's also useful just to add that if you keep a record of the provenance of the money. So if, for example, if you got a donation from someone and you have an audit trail of that donation or a grant, it's useful to make sure you have that in place as well, in case the funder will ask for evidence of it when they come to match fund.
Yeah.
Thank you. So we have a question in from Roy. He says he did not realise they could have 2 funding applications, and they secured some money from Englefield Trust before they had live funding accepted. I believe this cannot be match funded. Is this correct? Is that one for?
I think this is the Greenham Trust one. Yeah. Hello, Roy. So if it depends on the funding offer. If it's trust top up, then I'm afraid it can't be matched, because under the terms and conditions of trust top up, we don't match funds from other charitable organisations. If, however, it's a major match funding offer for a major grant, then we could match it if you provided evidence of the grant from Englefield. But I think in this instance it's trust top up.
Thanks, Jill. We have a. Sorry, were you going to say something?
Sorry, Marina. I think the key message is to read the terms and conditions closely for each individual funder when it comes to match funding, because they'll all be slightly different.
Yeah.
Thank you. So we have a question from Nina. Can an individual who is raising funds for a particular charity use the Good Exchange?
Yes. So perhaps a fundraiser who's supporting your project, possibly. That can definitely happen. So if a fundraiser wants to come in and support your project, you have a button on your live project page that says Become a Fundraiser. And they can click on that, and that will prompt them to set up a fundraiser profile on the Good Exchange. Now, from there, when they've set up their profile, they can add details of the activity that they're doing to support that project. They can add their own personal target, and they can add lots of nice images and videos and things. And then once that's ready and live, they can share out the link to their fundraiser profile to their own supporters, friends, and family to encourage donations. And any donations they receive through their fundraiser profile will also come through to your project, because you're both linked. And if you have match funding in place, those same donations will be matched. So it's all about linking everyone up. And again, that collaborative thing of getting everyone fundraising to help you and get your fundraising target met as soon as possible. So I would get them started by clicking that button on your page. And we also have a fundraiser guide on the help and support section on the website, which can be really useful to send out to supporters like that.
Thank you, Misha. Now, those are all the questions that have come in. We have got some questions that were asked yesterday on the Sovereign forum, which I thought might be useful. So one that was asked here is a project has capital and revenue elements. Should we set up 2 projects on the Good Exchange to make it easier for funders to see which one is more appropriate for them to fund, or is it okay to have one project that has both of those elements in it?
You can have one project with both elements. You will have the option when you're working through the project to select capital, revenue, or both, and see more information on what those are. If they're all part of the same project anyway, that's okay. For example, you might have a core funding project, but you need to also buy some laptops. So that would be capital and revenue. That's okay to do. You don't have to separate them out. Really, in the Good Exchange, I think in terms of projects, you can run multiple projects. And going back to the kind of the multi-year funding projects, it is better to put them on year by year anyway, because if you get support from one funder, it would open up, the next project would open up to them again the following year. So year by year is better, and per kind of make sure you mention all the areas that are included of your beneficiaries, because all of these questions within the application are what we call matching questions that help you to match with the different funders. So yeah, generally setting up your project, you can do lots of different things with it, and both capital and revenue is fine.
Yeah, if I can just add from a Greenham Trust perspective, if it's what I'd call a related project, like Misha says, if it's and it's got laptops plus salary costs, etc., absolutely fine to put capital and revenue in the same project. But if it's out and out something totally separate, then I would recommend a separate project for the capital item.
Mm-hmm.
So, because that way, then some funders would choose. We might choose to fund one project and not the other. So,
yeah.
Thank you, Misha. So another question we had yesterday was, if you're offered more than the amount you've got on your project, can you accept all the offers and increase the value of your project on the Good Exchange?
It's probably unlikely you'd be offered more than what's left on your target. If you are, you can extend it. So let me show you how. If you go to your dashboard, and so we're going to my dashboard and then approved projects. And then we click into the project on the title, because we're wanting to request to edit some costs here. So this is something more fundamental. So we're clicking on the title, and you can see I've got a request edit button up here. Okay, now the reason I've got a button that reads request edit is because I already have had funding on this project. So you need to make an edit request to us, first of all. When you click that button, it says, what would you like to edit on your project? And you can put a little bit of information in about what you want to edit and save that. That comes through to me. I have a look at your request. And if you've had funding on your project, I usually have a little chat with the funders who've supported you first before we go ahead and allow that edit to happen. And then it goes back to, once I allow that, it goes back to your draft application section. And you can adjust the costs in your project and the associated cost evidence in the project and submit it again for review. And we'll do that in the same way as when you submit your project initially. Now, if you haven't had any funding on your project yet, we don't need to check with any funders. So this button will instead read reset to draft. When you do that, again, it will ask you, what do you want to change? But in this instance, it will straight away go back to your draft application section for you to start editing and submit it again. So this button can be different depending if you've had funding or not, and it will allow you to edit your costs. So you can go ahead and do that. You want to extend your target anytime, that's not a problem. You might want to extend your target, or you might want to close this project and start a new one, but you do have those options there available for you.
Thank you, Misha. From Louise, how long does an edit request usually take to be approved?
Not long at all. It's me, so I check these daily. So when I see those coming through on the dashboard, I will have a look and have a read to see what it is you want to change, perhaps check with the funders. That's very quick, that's fine. And then I will set it back to draft for you to work on it. So very, very quick. If you make your edits and then you submit the project again and it needs a little bit more work, I will send you an email to let you know before we put the project live again. So that's sometimes a delay, but it's not usually much of a delay at all. We like to get your project back online as soon as possible. As soon as you click that button, your project goes offline. So that's something to keep in mind. If you request to edit, we do have people making a request and then not editing for a number of weeks. So do remember that you've done that and go back in and make those edits as soon as you can.
Thank you, Misha. One question we do get asked quite a lot is about gift aid. So we get people asking why they're not getting gift aid on their donations, but 9 times out of 10, it's because they haven't allowed the Good Exchange to collect gift aid on their behalf. I don't know if you can talk people through or show people how to do it.
Yeah, I can talk you through it. So when you're first on the Good Exchange, you have your registration, and all of your registration details fall under the organisation tab. Just have a quick look at that. Now you can see in the organisation section, you have a gift aid piece there. So we're going to have a quick look at that. And we will ask you if your organisation itself is registered for gift aid. So are you claiming gift aid, and can you claim gift aid with HMRC on behalf of your organisation? So you do have to be able to do that first. So that would usually be registered charities, perhaps CIOs, and also community amateur sports clubs. Now, filling out this section isn't enough, because what you would need to do is nominate us as an agent to collect gift aid on your behalf for your Good Exchange gift aid. So what you need to do in that instance is complete an HMRC form online. And we used to do the manual copies, but we've changed to online only because HMRC can be quite clunky with manual forms. So online's much quicker for you. So you fill out the form online to nominate us as an agent. It's called a CHV1 form with HMRC. Once you've done that, you give us a copy of the PDF at the end of the process. And at that point, we add the gift aid option on your account and projects. And from that point, donors will be able to add gift aid onto their donations if they choose to and if they're eligible. So if you haven't done that already, you are a registered charity, you are eligible to claim gift aid, please do that form and nominate us as an agent. It won't stop you claiming gift aid yourself. Outside of the Good Exchange, you can have multiple agents collecting gift aid on your behalf. HMRC allow that, so it won't prevent you in any way from claiming your own outside. And yeah, it's a great way to get more funds coming through to your project. Definitely not something to miss out on. We have an FAQ again on the help and support section on how to complete that form. It's full instructions on how to do it, so have a look at that. And again, of course, you can come through to me on support email if you have any more questions on that.
And I think on the gift aid thing, one thing I would suggest is that don't wait until you need gift aid because you've got a fundraising event or something to claim it, because HMRC can be a bit slow at their end. So if you know you've got a fundraising event or activity coming up, or you know you're doing something to drive lots of donations, please do allow plenty of time for the HMRC process. So that is out of our control. We can't control how long HMRC takes to approve it at their end. We can do our end, Misha can do our end very quickly. So it's a good thing to do as soon as you set your organisation up on the Good Exchange, even if you haven't got a project, to start the gift aid process.
What we do as well to kind of alleviate that kind of slowness on HMRC side is, as soon as we have that copy of the PDF from the end of your process completing that form online, we add the gift aid onto your account at that point. We don't wait for HMRC to process the form because it can take a number of weeks. It's much quicker doing the online form, but they do have potential to take up to 12 weeks in some cases. So we don't want that delay for you. We want your donors to be able to add gift aid. There might be a delay for us in claiming it for you at the end of the month, but that's better than them not being able to add it at all. So hopefully that does help you a little bit.
So a question from George on that. He says, can gift aid only be claimed back from individuals' donations and not organisational donations?
That's correct. There are restrictions on gift aid. So HMRC have their own restrictions. It must be a tax, the donor, must be a tax-paying individual. It must be their own money, and it can't be kind of sponsor money or raffle proceeds and anything like that. So there are restrictions there. Also on the Good Exchange, you can't add gift aid onto collected funds, onto collection donations. It's only individuals. So that is something to keep in mind. Really, for that, the best thing for you to do is to encourage individuals to donate themselves, and then they have that option to add the gift aid. But that's not always easy if you're running a big event and there's just a bucket of collections going in, then you have to add it as a collection and you can't add the gift aid. But encourage people as much as you can to make that donation themselves on the platform.
So we have a question from Sarah. Where do we find which funders are using the Good Exchange so we can read their criteria?
Okay, yep. So if you can hopefully still see my screen, if you want to search for all the funders on the platform, if you go to the little magnifying glass on the top right-hand side, and you can see it says find a funder, applicant, fundraiser, or project. So I'm going to put nothing in this box and I'm going to tick find a funder, and it's going to show me every single funder on the Good Exchange who's currently live. So the list of funders are here. And if you go into any one of these, have a quick look at Englefield. It will list an overview about them as a funder, so you can open up the details and have a read. And it will also list any of their current funding schemes and grant rounds. And you can go into any of these for more information on those grant rounds. So we do hope that funders keep these pages up to date so that you can read more about what they do as a funder. So do have a look at those if you'd like to read more about, you know, their criteria, the areas they cover, and what funds they're currently giving out.
Thank you, Misha. And while we're talking about funders, a question that comes up a lot, and this is one for Julian and Jill, is the location and the area. Because as I mentioned, most of the funders on the Good Exchange are operate in certain areas and give grants in certain areas. So what can applicants do? Where's the best place for them to put that information when they're registering their organisation and also their project? And maybe that's one for Julian, Jill and Misha.
If you can quickly jump in terms of adding that info in your registration and projects. In your registration, there's a question in the specific section. If I go into organisations as your registration section, and I go to specifics, you scroll down, there's a question about what is the geographical area served by your organisation. We do get people leaving this blank. Please do try and add that in, because this helps with this actually helps with matching with funders, even though it's in your registration, and it helps us to send the right things to you about the funders that are currently on the platform. So do make sure that's completed in your registration. In your project, there's a question within the project. We've got two. Where is your project located and where do the beneficiaries reside? So again, make sure those are answered. Those are mandatory questions in your project. So if you don't answer them, it probably won't let you move on. But very, very crucial to fill out as much of the project details as you can. So I'll pass over to Jill if you'd like to.
Yeah, so Greenham Trust's area of operation is West Berkshire and the neighbouring wards of North Hampshire. So when we look at applications, obviously they match with us, and if it covers a bigger area, so if you put, for instance, if you cover the whole of Berkshire, it will still match with Greenham Trust because West Berkshire is part of Berkshire. So when we review our applications, we will go to those fields that Misha just showed you, where do the beneficiaries reside, where will the project take place? So we will look at those. We're primarily looking for where the beneficiaries reside, because it might be that you're planning a trip, maybe a respite holiday for disadvantaged people, and that's going to take place down by the south coast, which is outside of our area, but the people that are going up from our area. So we look at where do the beneficiaries reside. If your project covers a wider area, for instance, the whole of Berkshire, we may well come back to you and ask you what percentage of the beneficiaries come from Greenham Trust's area of operation. And any grant funding would then be made on a pro rata basis.
And just on what Jill was saying there, it's a good point about when you're selecting the areas. When you're doing this in your project, where will the project take place? You don't have to select West Berkshire and Newbury Town, because Newbury Town will fall under West Berkshire anyway. So just select Newbury Town and that's fine. Your beneficiaries question, your beneficiaries are probably going to come from a wider area, so that's fine to put West Berkshire, but try and make it as specific as you can. What we often have happening for Newbury applicants is they select Newbury Ward instead of Newbury Town. Now, Newbury Ward is actually in Redbridge, so you don't want to select the wrong one and then not match with funders, so make sure you select Newbury Town. Anytime you're selecting geography in your registration or project, there's a choice of two tabs, authorities and wards, or places, towns and villages. So have a look in both and see which is the right one to select.
The other thing Misha mentioned, that we also use that data in our mailing lists, and we try very hard, we don't always get it right, to target the events and the messaging with the people that are in the area or with things that they're interested in. So the more information you can give us when you do your application, the easier it is for us to target our marketing.
Yeah. I think it's a good idea as well. I know that you're creating live projects whenever you need to, and that's great, but do now and again just jump into your organisation section here on your dashboard and just make sure that all of your details in your registration are complete and up to date. Useful to keep that up to date because funders do look in there as well as the project.
So I think we've come to the end of our questions that have come in. Has anyone on the panel got anything else they want to add?
No, I can definitely show you some more bits while we're here. just generally the layout of your dashboard, useful to have a look around at the dashboard when you can to see where things are. So everything organisation-wise falls under the dashboard here. Your account as an individual falls under my account here. Okay, so that reflects your login. So as Marina said earlier on, the steps on the Good Exchange are 3 steps. It's creating your personal account, your login unique to you that you shouldn't share with other people. Then there's your registration of your organisation, which falls under the dashboard in this tab here. And then there's your projects, when you're creating them and when they're live. Now, let's say that you have changed your email address. You know, how on earth do I change my email address, you know, on my account? So to do that, you would just hover here under your name when you're logged in and select my account. And in there, you can amend your email address. And what that will do is it will automatically change the email address on your login as well. So definitely do keep that up to date. Definitely don't share your login. It's much more secure and better to have your own separate logins. You can have a number of users on your applicant account. So this is you as an individual. And if we go into your registration, and we scroll down to the bottom, you can see we've got the full team of people on here. Okay, now you can add as many users as you want to. You can remove users. You can add finance users. So you can have as many people as you want. Just make sure you're not all in there at the same time looking at the same project or something, because that's probably not going to work too well. But it allows you to have multiple people to help out. And we do encourage you to have at least 2 people, because sometimes we have maybe one person leaving and they're the only one on the account, and then there's no one managing it at all. So do try and keep your users up to date if you can. Now, as I said, all of your registration details falls under this tab, and your registration details don't reflect anything to do with your projects at all. This should be the work of your organisation generally. So do make sure that you don't put any project stuff here. All your projects are under drafts and under approved. It's good to remember those 3 steps on the Good Exchange.
Thank you, Misha. So we've got a question that's coming from Lou. How can I add updates or future fundraising activities and events? And how can I thank those who have donated?
Okay. So this is your edit public page stuff. So if we go to approved projects and we want to add details of a fundraising event for this particular project to let people know we're running something. And we also want to thank our donors. So we're going to click on edit public page for this one, because we're not making changes to anything fundamental. We're just doing a little bit of something on the front public page that donors see. So here we're going to scroll down. Now you can see here that we've got the latest updates section will show all of the people who've donated or provided a grant, etc. so far on this project. And in here, there's a little button that says add comments. And when you click on that, you can add a comment to say, thank you so much to Joe Blogs, who's just donated £20, really, really helping our cause. So that allows you to do that. You can also click, if I scroll down a little bit more, because it's right at the bottom, add event, and this allows you to add the details of a fundraising event that you're running. It's for info only, but it will let you say a bit about the event. It will let you add an image and put in times and dates as well, and so anyone visiting your project page will see that. So definitely a useful thing to do.
Thank you, Misha. So that's the end of the questions we've got coming in. Julian, you weren't here when we had asked the question about areas and locations and information that funders are looking out for. I don't know if you've got anything to add about what people should do.
Yeah, just one quick thing. Thanks, Marina. When you are writing your application, please state the beneficiaries per geography. If you're covering multiple geographies, don't just wait for the funder necessarily to contact you about that. That will give you the best chance of getting funding from multiple funders.
Okay, yeah. Thanks.
Yes. So what I would say is, you know, with your projects, make sure you're being as active as you can. If you've got a live project and you've got match funding, tell people about it. You know, share out the link to your page. Make sure you're logged out. find your project, share that link on your website, your emails, newsletters, your social media pages, because people aren't necessarily always going to know about your project. You've got to tell them. So do that as much as you can. Tell people their donations will be doubled if you've got match funding. What a brilliant incentive. There's nothing better than that. So, you know, do what you can to get that fundraising going. As Julian said, if funders can see that you're actively fundraising and you're receiving funds from other funders, from donors, from companies, that can act as an incentive for them to support you too. So do as much as you can with your live project.
And one thing I'd add to that, and you know, we know that people can choose to use any crowdfunding or fundraising project. But one thing that we do see, and we think people are missing an opportunity, is projects on the Good Exchange that have match funding are also advertising those projects on their website with links to other crowdfunding platforms where they haven't got match funding. So our suggestion would strongly be, if you've got match funding on a fundraising project on the Good Exchange, then make that your priority for driving donations rather than pointing to other crowdfunding platforms that don't have match funding. So use up your match funding and then maybe look at alternatives, but definitely focus on your match funding through the Good Exchange from your funders as a priority. And that might mean talking to the people who manage your website to change where your donate button goes, for example, which is something we see is quite often overlooked.
Yes.
Fundraising campaigns.
And it's a shame if you've got match funding for that then to become expired and then you haven't used it. So do take advantage of what you've got there. That's doubling, that's extra funds for your organisation. So, you know, do use them up.
So we're coming to the end of our scheduled hour anyway. So I'd like to thank our panellists for supporting it, and thank you to everyone for joining and asking your questions. So we're trying to help people to get more from their use of the Good Exchange and understanding how the funding bit works and the fundraising. So thank you very much to everyone for joining. As we said, we'll be sending out the recording and also the slides that we used later, and they'll also be on our website. So do have a look or pass them on to anyone else you think might be interested.
Yeah, and do have a look on our help and support page on our website. There's lots of videos, FAQs, lots of help on there, guides, how to do absolutely everything. So do have a look at that. And if you have a question outside of that, please let me know. Just email me on support@thegoodexchange.com. And there's also a contact form to reach me on that help and support page as well.
So thanks very much, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.